CAA were keen that that there be some sort of electronic conspicuity affordable. There's an electronic conspicuity working group that the CAA run when I was still working for the MOD. Because of my work on the Typhoon transponder, I was on that working group, and that got me meeting some other folk, and kind of led me into their world.
So good evening, everybody, and another interview and the world of electronic conspicuity. I think I've got the word down par now. My tongue's getting tied around that word. Another interview tonight with uAvionix and a gentleman called Mike, who has agreed to chat to me a little bit more about one of the devices they make and what the company produce that help us as pilots. So, Mike, please introduce yourself and give a little bit more about your flying background. Although I can see from the lovely 11 Squadron placard you have on the wall that you have flown some stuff in your time. So, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Mike Tetlow. I started life at the age of 19 flying for the Air Force. I flew the F4 Phantom for 5 years, from when I was 21 to 26. And wow. Then I went to the Tornado F3, where I was flying it for the best part of 27 years. And I, at some point in my life, ended up commanding 11 Squadron. And hence you can see that when we closed it down as a Tornado Squadron at RAF Leeming, I stole the sign from the outside of the ring road opposite my squadron. So here it is. And
why not run away with some gizzards? Yeah, I'm sure in your time you've done some stints in the Falklands.
Yes, I've had the odd visit to the Falklands, and I've done a lot of staff work on and off. So I was in the Air Force for 35 years, and wow. I ended up as a reservist flying the tutor at RAF Benson, which is where I'm also a member of their flying club, flying my own RV-8 aircraft. Nice. And some of the things I've done in my time included being seconded to Scotland Yard for 2 years, where I was the Air Force rep for the Home Office, and each service had its own representative, and we helped to develop the military contribution to the Olympic security plan. So I got to do air and put helicopter carriers on the Thames, Rapier missiles scattered around London, that kind of thing. So that was
I suppose the F3 is one of those things that likes to see things. So probably what you don't know about seeing things in the air, there's not really a lot to know, really, is there?
So electronic conspicuity not being conspicuous is sort of what I've been involved in. And at the end of my time in the Air Force, and in fact as a contractor when I left, I was working on the Typhoon development team at Abbey Wood. And I suppose what led me into uAvionix is that I was working on the Mode 5 transponder part of the development of Typhoon, and things like non-cooperative target recognition, and in a way that led somebody to point out to uAvionix when they were looking for a UK representative that I had some background in that area and contacts with the CAA.
Wow. Well, you kind of stole my second question. I want to try and understand, with all that experience, how did you become involved with uAvionix? And you said, were you kind of effectively poached?
I was minding my own business on holiday, trying to be retired, and I got a call from a buddy, and he said, "I'm going to be putting your name forward to uAvionix because I think you'd be useful to them." And he did, and they called me on my holiday, and we had a talk about it, and I thought it sounded interesting, and it was a little bit up my street in some respects. I hadn't done much to do with ADS-B before. Other than it was part of our plan to get it into the Typhoon, wow. But the nuts and bolts of it I hadn't really dealt with. But so I've had quite a steep learning curve on it.
But your background, I suppose, with like you said, not being seen, helps you also understand how to be seen in that respect.
Sure.
So, in the developing world of electronic conspicuity, and so one day I will get that right in the first go. What does uAvionix bring to flyers, and which area of aviation is uAvionix focused towards?
So initially, our focus was probably in the drone world, and that comes from the fact that our founder, Paul Beard, who's a Brit but lives in Montana, he has a background in developing model aircraft control systems, and he patented a couple of particularly groundbreaking technologies, and then that led him into making things ever smaller, and he moved into the world of ADS-B transponders and transceivers for drones. And as a, for instance, here's one here, which is a full Mode S transponder. I'll try and hold it a little bit closer. There you go.
Wow, that is tiny.
So that is a Mode S transponder with ADS-B.
I want one.
And for quite small drones, it's fairly low power. And then we have other transponders such as this one. Again,
does that say ping? Does it?
It does say ping, yeah.
Yeah.
And not terribly huge for slightly larger drones, but again, it's a full transponder.
Yeah.
The last one was 20 watts, and this particular one can work up to 150 watts, and then we are developing another one at the moment that will go all the way up to full power, 240 watts. And we also
I generally can't believe how small they are.
That's the GPS, separate GPS unit that connects into that.
Yeah.
So you can see that, the background of miniaturizing things inevitably sort of began to move over towards the GA fraternity, and they, in conjunction with the CAA, developed a product called SkyEcho. CAA were keen that there be some sort of electronic conspicuity affordable. There's an electronic conspicuity working group that the CAA run when I was still working for the MOD. Because of my work on the Typhoon transponder, I was on that working group, and that got me meeting some other folk, and kind of led me into their world. And I met a lot of good contacts in the GA world, especially from the LAA. There's a very nice guy called Steve Hutt who has a lot to do with that, and they have an organisation called Airspace for All, which has done a number of trials, and those trials have very much helped to get to where we are now, which is small ADS-B transceivers that can transmit at the same time as you have a transponder working in your aircraft, when initially there was a worry that they would interfere with each other. If you delve into the technologies, you would realize that they won't, but we had to prove that they won't. And so some trials went on. SkyEcho1 was used for that, and that morphed into where we are now with SkyEcho2, which is a standalone ADS-B transceiver that's a carry-on device not fitted to anything in the aircraft, which is why it suits your flying world very well.
Yeah. What, from paragliders right through to sub-70 through to microlights and the light GA world.
It's got a battery, doesn't connect to anything, has its own antennas internally, and it transmits ADS-B as well as receiving it.
So the SkyEcho2 system has been a development from one. What changed from the original system to what is available now, the SkyEcho2? Was there much of a change between 1 and 2?
Predominantly, it's the form factor and the fact that it has a long life internal battery.
Yeah.
So the SkyEcho1 had a sort of 40-degree canted aerial poking out the front of it, just a normal sort of car radio type aerial, about 4 to 6 inches long, and you would fit it onto your onto the coaming of your aircraft in the cockpit. The angle was such that it would point the aerial back inside your windscreen, and you would transmit ADS-B from that. Then we moved into the SkyEcho2, which is just much more of a sort of a unique, compact form factor.
A new term to me in doing a lot of research with systems, and I felt a bit of a numpty when I asked the question on a forum, what's an electronic flight bag? Effectively, it's a flight bag that you put in something like this or a tablet. What systems will SkyEcho work with, such as SkyDemon, Runway HD? And a question that got posed to me following another interview I did, some of the paragliding and paramotoring apps, such as Fly Sky High, will it work with those systems, or what is required for it to work with those systems?
So the Wi-Fi connectivity is using an open source version of GDL90, which is a Garmin protocol, funnily enough, from 1990. And it's been around a while. It is simply a communications protocol. So the fact that it's relatively old isn't a huge issue at all. It has no bearing on the operation of the device. But it's freely available, and anybody who cares to make their electronic flight bag compatible with a SkyEcho just needs to incorporate certain features of GDL90 into their EFB, which we will happily point out to them. And we work with companies who are trying to do that. There's a couple on the go at the moment. Runway HD it does work mostly with SkyEcho2, but there's a couple of features that need a little bit of further integration, and they're happy to take our input, which I'm happy to give them. And they come back every now and again and say, we've done X, Y, and Z. The most common that work in, I'd say, most respects, in fact, probably all respects, is SkyDemon, ForeFlight, and Easy VFR. And that very much is a factor of where you live and where you fly, depending on what you use. In the UK, SkyDemon has probably got the biggest market share. In the US, it's ForeFlight, and across the channel, it's probably Easy VFR. But those are not the only ones. There is Runway HD. We are working with some providers of other electronic flight bags. There is AirNav Pro, which is not currently compatible because it doesn't support GDL90, but they are prepared to look at it. So it's a growing field.
And that's the flip side that I'm learning, that as you've got a device that tells everybody, and I always use the analogy, you've got 30 guys on a hill, guys and girls, sorry, all pushing out ADS-B, but you've got to see it somehow. There's no point everyone transponding, pushing their signal out if nobody can see it other than somebody else with an electronic flight bag. So I suppose it's that flip side that's as key to the product as anything else, isn't it?
It is. So the interface that you use to see the data is important.
Right.
Equally, the technology that your device is using is important, and it's true to say that we have got there are competitor products that are not entirely compatible with ours, for instance, because of different technologies. Right. So not all electronic conspicuity devices transmit ADS-B, and that's probably one of the key features of our devices is that even down to some of the tiny ones for drones, is we do transmit ADS-B from a SkyEcho and other things on 1090 megahertz, which is the international frequency for transponders and is suitably protected.
You alluded to the fact that 1090 megahertz is the international frequency for these type of devices. Is the SkyEcho2 able to be used globally then, not just within UK, Europe, or wherever?
From a technical point of view, it could be used globally. However, from a regulation point of view, there are some country limitations. Okay. As an example, Australia, and we hope soon New Zealand, but definitely Australia, have adopted the same regulation as the UK CAA have, who frankly have led the world on this by allowing a 1090 megahertz transceiver to transmit in the presence of perhaps a normal transponder in the same aircraft. Trials were done. We worked with them and proved that the interference was so minimal that it wasn't really a factor. However, EASA across the channel still hasn't allowed transceivers, 1090 transceivers, to transmit. They have some concerns that are probably going to need addressing in much the same way, and it will take a little bit longer. So if you take your SkyEcho in your light aircraft across the channel, as you cross the FIR, you're supposed to turn off the transmitter.
It's more regulatory as opposed to interfacing.
There's no issue at all with it. It will work with any 1090 based traffic system. That's not a problem. It is just regulation and
red tape.
I think EASA will get there. Yeah. The Australians have been very proactive.
Yeah.
We have a standard that we adhere to called CAP 1391, which is the CAA standard, and the Australians just adopted it completely.
Brilliant. If anyone's interested in that CAP 1391, I'll leave a link in the description, so you can go and find that document. It's a fairly riveting read for those that like the technical side of things, but we'll leave it there and move on to the next question. This one is one I see frequently, and I'm sure from your background and your experience, you'll be able to highlight this, the whys and the wheres of military aircraft. So I see a lot of questions about military aircraft and air traffic control being able to see us while we're in the air. Will the SkyEcho 2 allow them to see us? And I appreciate it's a bit of a two-part question, and vice versa.
The answer to that is potentially. Okay. And a popular misconception is that all ATC units who have a radar can see ADS-B in the UK, and they can't. So there are actually quite limited numbers of ATC units that can see ADS-B in the UK. Aberdeen controls all of its traffic, especially the helicopters going out to the rigs, on ADS-B.
Right.
So they can, if you go up there, and some of our equipment, which we are doing a trial with them on, is up there for that purpose. And a couple of major units like Southampton Solent Radar can. In the military, they are rolling out a development process for their ATC equipment that's been going on for a few years now, called Marshall. And the phase of Marshall we're just getting into will allow military ATC units to see ADS-B. But at this moment, I believe it is only Brize Norton. So the answer to that is, can they see you? They could if they installed some fresh equipment, or in the case of the military, get to the point of turning on individual stations as they develop each part of Marshall. Yeah. So patchy coverage for ATC.
Well, the other part of the question is more to do with military fast jets, and will they ever see me? You've obviously been flying at very fast speeds, and the ability to see small aircraft is hard at the best of times. So with EC, is there any way, I suppose you'd have to break it away between frontline or transport or training aircraft, which of those military aircraft, or if you're able to talk about it, will actually have some ability to see EC and vice versa?
So in terms of the fast jets, the answer is mostly not. They have primary sensors, such as radar or JTIDs, and JTIDs is really a fancy encrypted secret version of ADS-B in many ways. The technology isn't so far apart, which just tells you how clever ADS-B is.
Yeah.
But obviously it's a closed net for the military only. So they do not see ADS-B largely on the fast jets, though they are just, as I think I mentioned earlier, rolling out ADS-B transmission from their fast jets. So they can transmit, and this is quite often so that they can go and work in theatres or train in the States where it's mandatory. Okay. And that the UK government, as have many militaries, signed up to being fully ADS-B compliant by, I think it's the coming summer now. It got delayed.
Okay.
But that's in terms of transmission. In terms of reception, not so much on the fast jets. Some of the more modern transport aeroplanes, A400M for instance, will have TCAS systems, and they would be able to see, and there's no definitive answer on this either. They would be able to see to an extent some ADS-B, because TCAS systems work on transponders, not on ADS-B.
I mean, there's a lot of detail in the conversation that we've had tonight, and really it's sort of going to bring this interview to a close. So are there any future developments for uAvionix that will complement the lighter end of the spectrum? Now, I think my question is maybe answered by the demonstration of the smaller drone elements. Will those smaller elements effectively for a paraglider, or is it pretty much just throw a SkyEcho2 in the back of the bag and you're as good to fly as anyone else?
We're just rolling out now, and you can look on our website for a transponder, full transponder called TailBeaconX, which is an ADS-B out transponder. It's integrated into one unit that fits into your tail light fairing in your aircraft.
Oh, wow.
One piece of wire that goes to the front end to control it. It's a transponder, and it sends out ADS-B. It has an upper and lower antenna. Take a look at the website, and that upper aerial can be tracked by a satellite called the Aerion satellite, and the lower antenna is there to provide downward transmission. It basically bridges all of the gaps in terms of connectivity and transmission, because it transmits up and it transmits down, and it is going to be really useful in mountainous areas where you have trouble transmitting down, but you can always transmit up to the satellite. And we have also gone into the world of very beautiful multifunction displays, and one of those products called an AV30 has a traffic display function which will connect to your SkyEcho wirelessly. And if you don't want an iPad on your knee, then you just need a 3-inch hole in your coaming that you can put this display in, which is also an HSI and an attitude indicator, amongst many other things.
I don't think my little Flexwing PB has got enough space at the front, but I'm sure I'll be having a look at the website, because that transponder
Probably.
actually is. Yeah, I have an air traffic controller friend that keeps telling me, when are you going to get a transponder? I said, when I can get a power supply enough to power it. So, but Mike, thank you so much for your time this evening. I really do appreciate that this world of EC, I'll go the short way round, the world of EC is just a minefield of either red tape, policy, or compliance. And the world, if we get it sorted in one area, the world then doesn't follow afterwards. So I think uAvionix are effectively trying to take a lead in a lot of this, aren't they?
We see ourselves a little bit as the sort of champion of the small, not literally, but the small pilot, the small aeroplane pilot, and where we see that things could be done better in terms of regulation, we're not afraid to point it out.
I will wrap this interview up here. Mike's given us a lot of information tonight. If you've got any questions, either drop them in the comments of the video, or equally, I'm sure there's an email address that can be contacted at uAvionix, and they'll be more than happy to help. I'm really interested to see where the electronic flight bags go, and I think that's the hidden part of the process. But Mike, thank you so much for your time this evening. As I say always, until next time, everybody, fly safe.